writer, news hound, and celebrity culture savant, Angie Nwandu reinvented the gossip industry for the social media generation and created a community 15 million strong with the Shade Room. This is her blueprint. Growing up, what were you thinking in terms of like professional aspirations?
I first wanted to be a rapper, and then I wanted to be a poet, and I used to like go around the country doing poetry slams and winning at the age of like 13, and I was first published at the age of 16, you know? Wow. But then when I got to college, the reality hit me that, okay, you don't really have the opportunity to write because you don't have the foundation or the support to do that. You need to go do something that is going to make you money straight out of college.
I have read some profiles about you and understand you had a very rough childhood. Can you tell me a little bit about your parents and how you ended up in the foster system?
They were immigrants, Nigerian immigrants. The Nigerian culture, a man is supposed to be the breadwinner and he's supposed to provide. And, you know, my mother was the breadwinner. My father had a hard time establishing himself out here. And as a result, began to drink and then became, you know, abusive. And that led to him taking my mother, you know, when I was 6 years old. You know, so that's how we got into the foster care system. But I was still, you know, surrounded by like a lot of Nigerian family members and still had the Nigerian influence. And that helped me. Honestly, it helped me to see myself not just as a foster child, but also as this Nigerian culture, you know what I mean, person who's coming here, who comes from a background of educated people. So, you know, I was able to be steered in the right direction, I'll say.
Growing up in such an unstable environment, how did that inform how you thought about money and career and all that kind of stuff?
Me and my sisters were having to figure out things on our own, whereas we didn't have the parental unit to, you know, help us through life. So we grew to be resilient. And then also I learned to be adaptable because I had to move from home to home. So because of that, I was able to adapt to different environments.
You're in college. I understand that poetry definitely doesn't seem like a stable way to provide. How do you land on accounting?
Well, I wanted to go into accounting because my cousin was an accountant and he was a big influence in my life. And so he was like, just get into accounting. You get a job afterwards and you can start making some money. You can take care of your sisters, you know what I mean? It was basically about survival, you know, at that point, because that's the reality. I didn't have time to like figure out and, you know, dream and wish. That's what I felt at the time. I got a job in accounting and that's where it all started. It just wasn't something that fed me, so I couldn't do it when it was hard to do. You know what I mean? When it was hard to do, I gave up on it because I wasn't passionate about it. So I started writing a script with a woman named Jordana. At the time, I was at this foster youth program called Peace for Kids, and she used to volunteer there. And so I was like, you know what? I'm so frustrated with everything in my life. I want to be a writer. It was the first time that I declared that I wanted to be a writer. A week later, that's when I got the opportunity to do a script with her. So I wrote a scene, and it was jacked up because I'm not a screenwriter. You know what I mean? I didn't know the rules, but I wrote a scene, and she read it, and she was like, yeah, we're going to do this together. You know what I mean? And after that, we just were like, full force, let's do it together. It went to Sundance, so I was like, this is all meant to be. Things are falling behind because I was so focused on the script. I wasn't really doing my work. It was tax season, so he had to get all the stuff together. So it was the worst time to leave, but I was like, anyway, this is like huge, I'm leaving. I will never forget on the last day, Michelle Satter, who's the head of the Sundance Lab. So she was like, everybody's showing their short films and their movies. What do you want to do? What kind of presentation do you want to do? I'm like, I'm gonna do my poetry. And so she was like, okay, we'll let you do that. So right as I'm like 5 minutes before I get on stage, my boss calls me and he's like, Angelica, you better get back on that plane. He's like, you better get back here and help me with these taxes right now. So I'm freaking out, about to cry. You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean? And he's like, okay, you're fired unless you come back today. And I'm like, well, then I quit, you know? So Michelle, she walks me onto the stage. Mind you, I'm on a stage and it's people like Quentin Tarantino in the audience, Michael Goldenberg, and huge directors in the room.
And you're 21, 22 at this point?
I was 23, living in the hood, by the way, in the dirty, dirty hood. I'm talking about Hawthorne, Prairie, and 105th. So I'm going up there to speak and I'm starting to say my poetry and I'm crying my eyes out. But I'm not really crying about the poetry. I'm crying because I lost my job. As soon as I walk off the stage, Michelle Satter taps me on the shoulder and she's like, okay, that's it. I'm gonna give you a grant to write because I really believe in you. You know what I mean?
And this is to go screenwrite?
This is to go screenwrite. But you know me, I'm like, this is my chance to start something else. What am I gonna go back to? This is short, you know? It takes years to make a movie. I needed a backup plan. And so I put the pedal to the floor and I was just thinking.
So wait, the Shade Room was your backup plan?
Yeah. You know what?
It's a pretty good plan B.
It's so funny. The day that I decided I wanted to do, I didn't even know the name yet, but I decided I wanted to do a blog. I researched how to make money on blogs. And every site was like, don't do it. It's a dying industry. Go, walk away from it, And so I had no reason to continue on except for the fact that something deep inside of me was like, no, but yours is not gonna be dead. You're gonna find a way.
Despite the shaky state of the industry, Nwandu's inner compass told her to forge ahead. So she put it all on the table and gambled everything that her voice would break through the noise. What was your first post?
My first post was explaining the Shade Room. So I was like, yeah, it may be called the Shade Room, but this is really the truth room. And when you tell the truth, people can misconstrue it as shade, but sometimes it's really truth. You know what I mean? Like that was my first post. Then after that, I was talking about Apollo. He was cheating on Phaedra. And I think I wrote my little dissertation on that. And then I just started to go, ham on Instagram. And the reason why I started on Instagram was because of my weakness. I was not technologically savvy, so I didn't really know how to create a website, which actually happened to be the best thing that happened to me, was starting on Instagram. It's funny how sometimes your weakness is used to help you in your journey. Did
you really know, I have an appetite for this gossip thing. I think I can just do this at a level that no one else, in the competitive landscape can match? Did you really,
Yes, because I was a writer.
Okay, so you just...
Yeah, so I was like, let me come at it from my standpoint. I'm a writer, so I'm going to write the best captions and the best articles. I mean, just the way that I would relay the news was very... I don't even know how to explain it. It was just very creative. I don't know if people remember, but back then, gossip was really nasty in the sense that it was like, they would call you a B in the headline, like the B word in the headline, or, oh, her toes are ugly. I don't know, it was just really, really bad back then. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it, but I'm not gonna have those type of headlines. It was embarrassing because I had to start posting, and they thought, obviously everybody thought, what is she doing? She doesn't have a job. Why is she on Instagram all day? So it was an embarrassing time, but I just was like, you have to believe in the vision,
Take me back to that first, week or two. You go from 0 to 10,000 in 10 days. I would imagine that you were like, holy shit, I can't believe this is...
I was at first. I called my friend at the time. I had 3,500 followers in 3 days or something like that, something crazy like that. And I was like, I have 3,500 followers, can you believe it? She was like, my old dusty party promoter has 3,500 followers. She was like, that doesn't mean anything. And I was like, no, you have to understand, we're gonna have an office one day, we're gonna be big, because this doesn't make sense. 3,500 followers in 3 days, I knew something was weird. I started to write on people who weren't traditionally famous, people who were Instagram famous, I'll say, like King Amaya at the time, and she was a transgender model. She had a boyfriend scandal or whatever. So I started with them. And because they were not traditionally famous, they would come to the Shade Room and comment and give their tea. But they had a whole fan base. So they would look through the hashtags looking for her and be like, oh, this is the Jew. Oh, and I would go in their comments too. I'd be like, if you want the tea on, if you want it, I got it. Come follow me.
Well, the other thing that I've noticed that you do at an expert level is lurking in the comments of famous people to see what other famous people are talking to them, or in the gossip world. That is truly innovative.
I was never able to capture all of that because obviously no one person can do that. It was the people that started to follow the Shade Room.
And they'd alert you to
They would alert me because it'll be a Chris Brown diehard fan. Because of that, they stalked Chris Brown all day. And so they would actually get in and say, this happened. And then I would go verify it. But they were the ones that were getting all of the tea. And so that's how it was starting to grow, because people were like, how is this site getting this so quickly? Within a second, they could post and we would get it. Because we had 10,000 spies at that time who were all over the internet capturing all of this. I want to say in 6 months, we had half a million. When I learned I had something that I could see getting bigger was when I realized that they didn't come to get the news. They came to talk about the news. So they didn't care if they saw the news elsewhere. They would send it to me and say, put it on the Shade Room so that we can talk. And so I was like, oh, this is a community kind of. I was like, let me call them the roommates, because it's like they live in the Shade Room. You live in the Shade Room, we're in the Shade Room every day. That's when the roommates started to spiral out on their own.
What was your schedule like? Were you posting 20 times a day? Were you posting all night?
I was posting 24 hours a day, to the point where my family thought I was gonna die. They were like, you're gonna have a mental issue. They were calling me the woman in the cave. I mean, I was like posting. I would stop and pull over on the freeway to post. It was that serious. I had to be on time with everything. I had to break stuff, and I had to just consistently give them what they wanted, because they would say, we need it. We need the tea. It's 5 o'clock. You haven't posted. But it didn't feel like work. It felt like I was working towards something big, and I was doing what I loved.
You're living off of the grant money.
And it's running out fast.
Okay, so as the money's going down, but the followers are going up, where is the inflection point where you're like, okay, this is going to be big enough that this is going to sustain me. I'm never going to have to get a job again.
The grant was only $5,000, so it wasn't like a lot of money. My rent was $950 at the time. I had calculated it was gonna last me 6 months, but obviously that calculation was off by 3 months, because you wanna eat and all these things. I gotta get my hair done, things I just didn't calculate, And so it got to the point where my account was empty. It wasn't just empty, it was negative. And rent was due and I had a check. I was like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna write this check for my rent to my manager, and I'm going to pray. You know what I mean? And it's funny that, a lot of people will say, she prayed. I prayed that my rent is covered. So I wrote the check to my manager, and that day I was racking my brain, like, how am I gonna do this? How am I gonna do this? And I got an idea. I see the IG models doing it. I'm gonna do it too. I'm going to put up a post and say, I'm accepting ads. At this time I had like 100,000 followers or so. And so I was like, well, let me post it. And so I did, and that day I made my rent money. I think I was charging like $75. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm doing it for $75. All these businesses started reaching out to me.
So brands just started into your DMs?
They were like, yeah, we want to be on the Shade Room. Of course. We were wondering when you were going to do this. So they were like, what? So I had like 11 or 12 businesses negotiating ads for like $75. So I made my rent. So then I started to research other ways, and I was like, let me do Google ads. I was like, let me create a website. They want a website. Let me do it. So I went on forest.net, I think, forestthemes.net. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
And I just had a funky website up there, and then I started to do Google ads on the website. And that week I made, it was under 5,000, but it was like around there. And I was like, I'm balling. I remember I called all my friends. I was like, y'all, it's a new day. It's a new dawn. I'm about to be like, I'm moving on to the east side, like moving on up.
How did you select the businesses that you were going to go after to try to get them to advertise?
A guy reached out to me. His name was Brian Young. And he was like, listen, I need to be your brand manager. I'm fresh out of college. I'm fresh out of Morehouse. I just lost my job at Sony. He's like, I need somewhere to go. Like, please. He's like, I can help you. You can help me. I'm like, yeah, I took a chance because I felt something in him, which was drive. And I felt ambition in him. And I knew that even though he didn't know what he was doing, he was going to make something happen. And so as soon as he got on the first month, we went from making pennies to, actually making something. You know what I mean? That we both could take home. And we were like, wow, okay. So after that, he just kept creating these creative strategies on making money when it came to like independent businesses. Like we were just going to independent businesses and getting all of our money for advertisement, especially Black businesses, because our website was for Black people. Some people wouldn't like the Shade Room, or they would say, oh, the Shade Room, what is its purpose? And I think that the purpose of the Shade Room is to celebrate and report on Black culture. And Black culture is not all positive. It's not all negative. You know what I mean? We're just trying to report the truth of Black culture. The funniness, the hashtags, the trending news, the opinion. And so when you look at the Shade Room, you're looking at a snapshot of Black culture, and the purpose is to continue to highlight it and put Black culture on the stage.
As you start to build this, how are you thinking about the brand of the Shade Room?
I say all the time, I wasn't a genius. I simply listened to my audience. They were like, we don't want to hear your opinion anymore.
Okay.
They kicked me off the blog because, it was biased. You know what I mean? I remember I hated Naya Rivera for no reason. I was just in a bad space. Like I said, I was in the hood still. I was. They were just like, get off the blog. We don't want to hear your opinions. Let's hear our opinions. And I actually wanted to, as I got more responsible with the audience, I was like, you know what? Let me try to diversify what I'm giving them, because I looked at it as like a meal. I can't just give you meat all day. As good as meat is, you're gonna start to get sick. You're gonna need some rice. You're gonna need something else to fill you up. And so I was like, okay, let me give them some, music here. Let me give them some fashion. And then it branched out to politics.
Do you still curate every single post across all of these platforms?
No. Now I have a team of people that do it. And so, it helps me. We started to get professional with it, like have schedules and things like that, but it's still raw because it comes from the roommates, so it's still raw. Like, it builds a relationship with our community, and they really feel like we're family. So when they wake up in the morning, they send whatever they find interesting to us, and they're like, listen, this is it. And that's what makes the Shade Room, that's where its value is in the community. It's hard to replicate that.
The roommates were teaching Nwandu valuable lessons about what they wanted from her brand. But soon she would face challenges from outside the community that threatened to ruin it all. If you had to pick your top 3 posts of all time, like the 3 posts that were the game changers for Shade Room.
I can't remember the exact post, but whatever post got us deleted the first time was a game changer, because when we got deleted.
What year is this?
Man, what year? Every year. What you mean? This was 2015, I believe, for the first time. We had people who had paid for packages for months in advance who wanted their money back when we got deleted. And it was like one of the worst things. I woke up and they're like, Shade Room's done, it's down. Celebrities were tweeting about it, and they were like, what happened to the Shade Room? Then everybody who followed the Shade Room was tweeting about it. So their friends who didn't know about the Shade Room started to know about it. And so all the websites who were reporting on us being deleted were informing their audiences about it. And then when we started the new page, we grew faster than we grew the first time.
How long did it take from the hard stop to get to where you had been the day before that?
The first time we got deleted at 500,000. I'll never forget. We had just hit 500,000. A couple days later, we got deleted. The second time, it took us 2 months to get there, where it took us 6 months the first time. It was a faster climb, and the deletion propelled us forward.
So the second time it happened, you didn't panic, you just thought?
Oh, I panic every time. Yes, I panic every time. In fact, I used to have dreams about it. I used to wake up like, oh my God, we got deleted. I panicked, yes. But afterwards, I was able to see that it helped us. Like, obviously, everybody in retrospect, you can look at your past and say, oh, I see how it all connects.
So what have the biggest challenges been, or the most challenging moments in running the Shade Room?
The most challenging moments has been going against the grain, I would say. Obviously in the beginning, starting on social media, nobody saw any benefit in that. And they were like, that doesn't make any sense that you are publishing directly on Instagram. It doesn't make any sense. Having to go with that inner knowing of saying, no, this is actually where the gold is. You know what I mean? Was hard, but we were able to build a brand that if we were to get deleted tomorrow, they would try to find us somewhere else. And that's the important part, is that what we created doesn't necessarily have to live on a platform. It can live across platforms.
How would you describe the corporate culture of the Shade Room?
There is no corporate culture. I think that's what it is. There is no corporate culture. The Shade Room wasn't operating as a traditional business anyway from the beginning. Like, we were all at our own house, you know what I mean? And even when they said, hey, you should get an office, I still waited until it was absolutely necessary for us to get an office. So everything, the way that I run the company is very lean, in my opinion.
So you now have about 12 or 15 employees and 2 offices, one in Atlanta, one in Los Angeles, about 6 different platforms that you're publishing to.
Yeah.
How do you divide your day?
The way that I divide my day is I do give them creative direction when it comes to the platform, as far as like what they would, what I want to see from them, what posts I like, what posts I don't like. I'll go on there and say, hey, pull this down. I don't like this. This is not the tone. But, like just directing them when it comes to like projects and doing things like this, you know what I mean? And pushing the brand forward and kind of making sure that everybody's aligning with the vision and making sure that the vision is executed. My main important thing is to make sure that I'm constantly being creative. You know what I mean? Constantly being able to generate those creative ideas, because that's what is pushing the Shade Room forward.
How would you describe your management style?
I like to see what their talent is and how they work. And I try to, cater to that, because if you cater to everyone's style of work and you can tap into that, then you'll have a good thing. And so I'll have some people, I'm like, I looked at you, you're amazing. You caught my eye. I know that the roommates may feel the same way. I feel like you could be a personality. So that's what it is. I let them work until I find out what they are best at, and then I put them in that area.
So I know that you turned down a couple different reality TV offers.
Yes.
Why?
They wanted to do something that was old and had already been done before. Like the TMZ is already done. It's already done, and I don't believe in doing things that are already done well the same way. Like to me, it doesn't make sense.
As a small business owner, was it hard to walk away from those checks?
Yes, it was. I felt crazy a lot of times. You know what I mean? It's really faith. I sat down with Summer at BuzzFeed and she was like, okay, the one thing I'm going to tell you is do not accept any TV offers from these TV people. She said, we didn't accept, and now look at NBC cutting us this check. Because as long as you continue to build the brand, you will always be offered a television show, right? I really pay attention to what I'm told. I believe that certain people are put in your life for a reason, to tell you certain things, to lead you on the right track. And so when I had a conversation with someone who was way more intelligent than me in that situation and way more experienced, I took that experience and said, okay, this is what you have to give me, so I'm gonna take it.
Self-financing everything, I imagine while you are able to maintain control, is also pretty tough from a cash flow perspective as you invest in things like video and stuff like that. How has that independence informed how you move into these new spaces?
You know what? I think that sometimes people have too much money. I think sometimes when you have too much money, you're not resourceful and you don't make proper decisions all the time because you can just do it. We've had the opportunity to take a lot of investment, but we, have turned it down. We're bootstrapping basically. And so I want to see how long and how far we can go bootstrapping. I'm cheap, that's just the truth. I'll think before every dollar. I'm like, where is that going? Why? And, how can we make that less expensive?
You have a dynamism that has attracted people. What do you think it is about your voice that people connect to?
I think it's the authenticity of my voice. And I think that that's what I'm going to stick to moving forward, is telling the truth. I tell the truth about my story and like what happened to me, where I am now. Like for instance, I could tell you the truth now and say that I'm terrified of the future of the Shade Room. Not that I don't believe in the future of the Shade Room, but that my dreams are so big that I'm terrified.
Totally. I mean,
yeah.
the higher you get up the ladder, the further it is down.
Yeah, like the higher you get, the higher the falls.
You mentioned waking up from nightmares about the page being shut down.
Yes.
Is there an anxiety about the business that drives you forward?
Yes, there is, because I feel like if I was 100% at peace with it, then what keeps me up at night thinking about a plan is that anxiety, is the fact that I'm like, well, we have momentum now, you know what I mean? So you want to operate on that momentum. That definitely drives me. It keeps me awake. It keeps me on my heels. I feel like I'm at square one.
Was there ever a moment where you thought, I'm not going to be able to make payroll, this is going to fall apart?
Yes, every time we got deleted, which was 4 times across Facebook and Instagram, I believe everything happens for a reason. So there's something inside of me that knows my purpose and knows why everything is happening. And so when things like that happen, I look now and say, okay, what's the reason? And what's the lesson I need to learn from this? And how can the company grow? I'm gonna be relentless. I'm gonna fight and try to overcome every obstacle. you.